going to get started. If you can take your seats. I think this next topic is super important because advertising loses a lot of people to technology, startups, and really the smart agencies figure out how to harness that entrepreneurial spirit and put it to work for their clients. So we're going to be hearing today from Amy Swift-Crosby, Susan Cradle and Katherine BARR, and Christy Royce is going to be moderating. Please welcome them.
Go.
Après vous.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't think so. Thanks, Kat. You are just as bright and capable of anybody in this room. And outside this room, too. Take a seat at the table and make sure your voice is heard. The individual that so eloquently shared that inspiring quote is Pat Yarrington, who is CFO of, anybody know? Chevron. CFO of Chevron. She was presented with the Woman of the Year award in the financial industry in a presentation last week, 2 weeks ago. That phrase really grabbed me. Take a seat at the table and make sure your voice is heard. Amy, really being able to run a room, lead a room, hold a room. After you introduce yourself, share with us what skill sets you need to do that, and what have you learned in your incredible career?
Well, my background is as a strategist and a copywriter, and I founded a community for women in business in Los Angeles in 2008 because I was a person who was really turned off by most networking events and felt socially almost paralyzed. I realized this year I'm actually an introvert, big discovery, as a social person to actually be an introvert and realize what that means, which is that it's very hard to thrive in environments with small, pattering bits of chit-chat that don't go very far. So I had a really hard time doing that, and I wanted to collide and interact with other women, other people doing other things, not just in my business. So I started this community which gives entrepreneurs a platform for telling their story. So I interview a lot of people and run a lot of discussions, and I'm sort of a conduit for contextualizing the entrepreneurial life for many like minds and other women who are taking that risk and leaving the security of a paycheck and hours, hopefully changing into flexonomics or something like that soon, but making their own way. So to your question, how do you hold a room, read a room, capture a room? I think there are a lot of ways to do that, but the thing that I see most, because for our speakers, we look for unpracticed speakers, because entrepreneurs, when they're really telling their best story, it's not for a media opportunity. They're not giving talking points. They're not selling anything. We really look for people who share it, warts and all. So when you're looking for people who are not practiced speakers, often you get somebody with a great story who doesn't know how to tell it.
Right.
And as an interviewer, a moderator, it's frustrating because you know it's in there and you can hear the words, but the audience is disconnecting with them a little bit because they're not either physically projecting, they're not opening their mouth. I interviewed someone 2 nights ago, these 2 interior decorators, amazing, talented, very, complex, interesting points of view, but they really both talked like this, and they really felt, and I was so uncomfortable. I just wanted to say, you're awesome, open your mouth, you know? So sometimes even just the physicality of being somewhere and engaging and even using your body. And someone said this earlier about apologizing. A lot of times I'll be in rooms as a strategist where a woman is presenting, and one of the first things she says is, this may look a little disorganized, I haven't had my coffee yet, or sorry about it's like, you don't have to apologize to be there. How about just start, because you're awesome, you know?
Right.
There's so many more things, but those are the two things that are at the front of my mind constantly.
Great. Thanks, Amy. Katherine, one of the things that we talked about in our prep call was the importance of investing in yourself. And when you can invest in yourself, it's incredible the impact it can have on yourself, on your team, on your clients. So please, if you'll introduce yourself and then respond to what have you done to invest in yourself, and how has it had an impact?
Sure. Good morning. It's great to be here this morning with everyone. I'm Katherine BARR. I just about apologized. I'm Canadian and a woman, so I've got a double whammy going against me. We always apologize as Canadians. So I have a varied background. I won't go into all the details, but I've had roles in marketing, in product development, and in negotiation at technology firms, both large and small. And I'm now a general partner at a technology venture fund called Mohr Davidor Ventures on Sand Hill Road. We have more than $2 billion under management, and we invest in technology companies across the board. And just had 2 companies go public in the last few months. So,
oh, congratulations!
Yeah,
wow.
thank you. So on the topic of, you can imagine, I mean, it's a world that's definitely high testosterone, very fast-paced, and the entrepreneurs and investors alike need to definitely learn to present ourselves with confidence and get the point across. So throughout my career, the question was, how have I invested in myself? I actually grew up really shy and forced myself to do public speaking and to do drama and to start to become just much more comfortable getting out there, because it was just very uncomfortable for me to, I mean, this would have completely petrified me, frankly. You know, I'm not going to say how many years ago that was. Yeah. But then throughout my career, I've always tried to find opportunities to get myself out there. So our entrepreneurs and even ourselves, the investors, because we have to be pitching to our limited partners, we actually often get training. We do get presentation training, all of us. And it's in the how do you speak, how do you present yourself, but it's also how do you figure out what the interest, concerns, et cetera, of the other party are to make sure that you're actually getting the points across that they need to hear. Other things, when I worked as a negotiator, we did a lot of negotiation training, and I started to teach an executive negotiation program at Stanford, which was really great because you sort of learn something and then you do something, and teaching someone else how to do it really starts to ingrain it in you as well. And I feel that the negotiation training I've had, that created a lens through which I view the world now that I think is pretty fundamental. So I can talk more about that as we go through the panel. But
you bring up such a great point, Katherine, and that is, I always had this phrase when I developed leadership training for organizations, and it's tell, show, do, review. The best way to learn something is to teach it. So really great point of bringing that up, because it helps overcome some of your fears and trepidations around that, okay? Susan, welcome.
Thank you.
One point, stellar point that was made yesterday was it's not about women being better. It's about women being different.
Yes.
And I loved that. And as I look at your fabulous career, how are you different, and how does that make you better?
I think how I'm different is we're all different, and instead of trying to become like everyone else, I tried to bring that I'm Southern, I'm female, I'm kind of a girly girl, I'm not an alpha female, you know, and instead of trying to become that thing that I thought was successful, I just tried to believe that, you know, I mattered based on my experiences, and to be authentic. I mean, I said that yesterday, but I really think that a lot of times we think we have to fit a certain mold to succeed. And I think the authenticity, the listening and caring, and it's what your quote said, which is that you matter in a room if you believe you matter. And I'm a big believer in diversity. I don't want people to tell me what they think I want to hear. I want them to tell me what they believe, and then we'll think about it and come to a good decision. But I do think one of the problems with, and maybe not just women, but a lot of people that want to have a big career, is they think that there is a certain mold that they need to fit into. And I think that becomes tragic, because I don't like them. I mean, I don't care gender, whatever. When someone comes into my office and I feel like they're playing a role, I push back. I want their honesty, and if they're intelligent and they're talented, be yourself. It will come out, and you'll succeed.
Susan, how do you encourage people to be themselves when there is that fear around showing the real me?
Well, you know, I'm very clear that, especially in the creative, that when we're discussing things, the work and the person, they're connected, but they don't define each other. And that who they are as a human being and the work they put on the table, they exist together, but they also exist separately, and that people have to be comfortable with the criticism, and it's not a criticism of themselves, it's a criticism of the work on the table. And together we're going to get that work better, you know. And I think that's helped a lot. You'd have to ask the people that work with me. I also make a lot of mistakes, and I'm very honest about showing them the things that I've completely screwed up. I mean, I think I did 4 things bad yesterday. And I think when I tell people that, you know, we all say, oh, you know, it's fail forward fast. Yeah. But I don't know how many people really believe it. And I will say, fear of failure it's debilitating. And I think you have to be, you are going to fail. And when someone finally said it was okay that I could fail, I started moving forward much more quickly, because I became actionable versus fearful. And just know you're gonna get bruised, and you're gonna survive. I mean, I used to say Tylenol, sorry, but Tylenol killed people. You know, they actually put a product out there and people died. And at least in advertising, I'm like, I haven't killed anybody with an ad yet. So, you know, I've had ads killed, but you know, and you put it in perspective, you get braver. And I think that's, entrepreneurs to me are brave. You know, that the spirit is that it's brave, and there's courage in it.
Oh, great point. And, you know, I hear the word entrepreneurship, and the automatic response that I get from a lot of people is, oh, scary. I don't want to go there. That's scary. And I find in both the men and the women that I work with as clients that the older we get, the risk increases, the fear of risk and the fear of failure increases. And especially those of us that have been in our channels for a long time. We've got the comfort of a paycheck. We've got the comfort of benefits. We've got the comfort of our friends. What would inspire me to go make a big change? Susan, I'm going to let you continue this one, because my gosh, you left. Tell us about this incredible environment you left. And you know, there's also a difference, and I'm sorry, I'm jumping in as I'm asking a question, but this whole thing of thoughtful risk. What the heck is thoughtful risk? You know, feel the fear and do it anyway. Yeah, right. You know, when you took your big career change, was that thoughtful risk?
I think so. I worked at BBDO in New York for 24 years, and at the time that I left, I was running about $2 billion worth of advertising, and some of the brands I had been on, M&M's 15 years, Singular, AT&T, 9, 10. And it wasn't ever comfortable, because I don't think this business is very comfortable. And actually I think comfortable can get to boredom pretty quickly. But I realized that I kind of knew the playbook, and I kind of knew when I went into a meeting, I knew who was going to say what and where it was going to go and how long we were going to be doing that, and then it would come to and be like, okay, and then we'll end up here eventually. And I thought, I don't know if I'm in a healthy position for the brands I'm working on and for the company I'm working with if I'm kind of, you know, just kind of sleepwalking through, because I know where we're headed. And then I also thought, I've put 24 years in, I want this to mean something. And I'm not sure doing the same thing I've been doing is going to get to the next meaningful moment. And the call from Leo Burnett came, I was not seeking it, but it came at a time when I was questioning the meaning of what I was doing. Because I think another thing that I think sits at the heart of entrepreneurial spirit is legacy and meaning. You want to leave something behind. You want something, this 3% conference, the ambition is it becomes the 97% conference, or no, the 50% conference, I guess. We don't want to dominate the world, that would be boring, then we'd have to go back, and then we'd have to have a 3% conference, and it would be...
Yes, exactly.
But I do think wanting to do something meaningful, and so when I took the job at Leo, actually, Andrew Robertson said something quite lovely to me. He said, can they afford for you to fail? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, in this position that you're taking, can they afford, how much can they afford for you to fail? And I went through with that question, and the answer was they cannot. I'm gonna have to fail really badly for them to not get me to success, like to the point where they would have to fake my success, I think, because this was such a big decision at that company's, at that time at Leo Burnett. And I think that is important to ask yourself as you're getting ready to do something risky is, what is the failure? Is it gonna be pretty easy for me to fail or for people around me to let me fail? And if the answer is no, I'd say go try it. It's a weird question, but I think it's a great way to vet risk.
Great, thank you. And Amy, my word, you have 2 businesses. You can't tell me that you were not surrounded by resistance day in and day out. How do you take that risk, take that next step without being railroaded or bombarded with the whys?
Well, I try to be really in touch with my why. Why am I doing it? Why am I doing it? I mean, from a parenting perspective, from a business owner perspective, I really try and stay in touch with my why because it's my filter for making all my decisions.
Great.
So something I learned, is everybody familiar with agile development? This is a room where like I can say that.
Yes.
And people are like, yeah, totally. Usually people are like, I have nope, nothing.
What the heck?
So I try to, in your situation, it would have been very hard to do this, but in starting a business or in running a business, you can incrementally experiment, tweak, experiment,
Yes.
and sort of, make it frequent finish lines.
Great.
Rather than a single one. So that's how I try to do it because I feel like it mitigates risk and it also helps me continue to take risks without being paralyzed by perfect. Which
great one.
is really...
I think that's really important, even in our industry, in a company as big as Leo Burnett. One of the places I've seen people fail is that they try to get everything perfect before they pull the switch to go. And I've had to let go of a few people that were in a position to build something, but they waited for perfection, and the time you turn around, it's been 2 years and we haven't done anything. And it's like you said, get enough of it going and then adjust. It's amazing the difference, and the success happens much faster.
Oh, great one. Paralyzed by perfect. How many of us can admit to that? Katherine, my word, talk about riskful.
Sure.
VC world, how can you not be surrounded by risk day in and day out? And how do you determine what's at thoughtful risk and what is not?
Yeah, so we're actually in the business of assessing risk. I mean, our actual business is to get returns for our limited partners, but we, on a regular basis, when we are getting pitched by entrepreneurs, we're assessing risk. And that's where the thoughtful risk concept comes from. That I think the first thing that I would say is that it's really important that the entrepreneurs and that we are very focused and we know our areas really well. So one of the things that we look for in our entrepreneurs is, do they know the market really well? So for example, this is one of the things that Kat, I think, had wanted me to mention on the panel. When I get pitched by a 24-year-old male entrepreneur who isn't married, doesn't have kids, and believes that me, his target audience, and he's pitching to me, should have another photo sharing platform, he probably doesn't totally fully understand his target audience, because I've seen far too many of those, and that's not going to move the needle in my life at this point in time. I have a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, so. it's a little intense. The photo sharing platform's not going to help. So just really the entrepreneur's got to really understand the market opportunity, who their target audience is. And then we, the investor, we're very thesis-focused investors. So we have to know those markets really well also. So we say we have 2 areas of focus, 2 majors and a minor. And we have to know those really, really well. So that enables us to effectively assess risk. And it doesn't mean that we don't take risk, because we're early stage investors, we absolutely do. But it's very informed and thoughtful risk. The second thing is that because we're very well informed, I think this points to Malcolm Gladwell's outliers whole concept, is that we're then ready. I mean, we're nimble and we are ready. So when the opportunity comes, when that amazing entrepreneur going after the big opportunity comes, we are on board and we're nimble and we are ready to, we sort of recognize the opportunity. We're ready to work with them and be nimble as we work towards the point you were making, sort of course correct towards the big vision that they have. Because they've got to be able to implement all the time, and it can't be step 1 to 10, go 2, 3, 4. It never looks like that ever in a startup ever. It's all over. It's kind of all over. But you're aiming towards the vision, and as things change, you have to be nimble. So I describe it as creative in a structured way. So you get really creative, and then you go and implement in a 2-week sprint, and then you A/B test, and you leverage the data, and then you go again, and it's this interesting iteration. Between being really creative but also structured and moving the ball towards the big prize and taking the input as it comes. And I think the final point, and this is where there's a really interesting tension, and I'm not sure there's a perfect solution for, as an entrepreneur you have to suspend disbelief about what's going to work, about what the solution to a particular problem is. I mean, you just see entrepreneurs, they just blow through brick walls all the time, right? And it means that you've got to sort of see something that a lot of other people don't see, because you know that industry, you know that market, you know the problem so well. And at a certain point, you've got to actually then listen to the feedback, though. And if you're getting enough of it that says that that's actually not the right product market fit, it's not resonating with the audience, it's not, you actually need to course correct, then you got to correct. And that's an interesting tension with entrepreneurs. That some either react too late, some react too early, some just don't react at all. And so that's where we play a role in helping to sort of guide them sometimes. And okay, no more brick walls. Let's like walk along the wall for a little while and then figure out where we're going to break through next.
Well, you're asking people to be 2 things. It takes a little bit of crazy.
Yeah.
So you're like, you want like that wild-eyed like person in your office, but then you're like, you need to be sane. You need to hear what we're saying.
Yeah, it's an interesting tension.
And they have to sort of live together in the same person.
Yep.
One theme that I've heard all day yesterday, and I certainly am hearing from what the 3 of you have shared thus far this morning, is again about listening. We have to listen to our own hearts and our own minds. We heard just a few minutes ago, we have to be able to read our clients and what our clients really want. We have to ask the right questions to figure out what the heck they want, whether it be an employee, a boss, a client. What additional tips could you share around how can you hear your voice, speak your voice so that it is heard at every table? And when do you know to shut up, as was said yesterday? It's a fine line.
Is this a trick question?
No, it's a hard one. How do you know what this whole concept of authentic listening? What is authentic listening? How do you know when to shut up and when to have your voice heard? Because I think that is very arduous for people that are sitting around the table, with men or without men.
I mean, I think that, don't speak just to speak. If you have a point of view about something, probably speak up. But I think where we mess up is that we think we have to be saying something in a room to matter. And it's more about what, it's that old quality versus quantity. I think quality is more important. And, I have an interesting story that might be helpful to some of the younger people out there, because I think a lot of times, and especially in company, I always thought that to be an entrepreneur, you had to get out of a company and go start your own company. And when we started talking about this panel, I was like, why am I on the entrepreneur? I don't know. I didn't start anything. But I realized I did start a lot of things. And one of the things that I found interesting is years ago I was reading the Wall Street Journal, and there was this guy, Jared Sandberg, who's now at Bloomberg. And he wrote something that was about meetings and how people work a meeting, and I agreed with some of what he said, and then I disagreed, and I had a point of view about something. So I just wrote him, at his email, and I said, "Hey, Jared, I'm reading this thing," and he goes, "I like what you had to say, can I use you as just somebody to quote when I'm looking for somebody in marketing or advertising? And I was like, yeah, I think so. Roy probably wouldn't agree. They had a PR at BBDO at the time. But I said, you can't associate me with my agency, but you can say Susan Cradle, an advertising professional. And then I cleared it with the PR department. I said, I've got this connection. But I thought that's a very entrepreneurial thing to do, to just sort of reach out and say, I have something that I think matters and is worth saying. And again, it's going back to your first quote. I had a thought that I thought mattered, and I tried to talk to somebody who I thought maybe could help it matter more. But again, it's about saying something that has value.
Great. Okay. And what about listening to your employees? You know, all of you have employees. How do you encourage what I would call that internal innovation? You know, we talk about entrepreneurship is innovation, but how do you encourage your direct reports and your colleagues to have that internal motivation and spirit and buy-in, if you will, to the strategy?
For me, I try to see what they think everybody else, including me, doesn't see that they did, and tell them. Because I think the biggest thing all of us want is to be heard, to be seen, to have our life experience recognized in subtle ways by the people around us. And of course, the best marketers make us feel seen and heard without us feeling marketed to. So for an employee, for somebody who's propelling your ship and is sort of one of the wheels in the vehicle making it go, they've got their head down and doing their job so much for you. You've sort of got your eye on the horizon. So to recognize something that they have done, for instance, one of the people who runs a lot of my events, I'll see the subtlety of where she put a trash can, where it's out of the view of everybody. It's so small, but I really appreciate it because everyone else has a beautiful environment because of some small thing. It's not in a performance review. I'll just say, I love when you do that. You get the subtlety of how an event should be. Thank you.
Great.
Small.
Okay. Small makes a difference. Catherine, what about for you?
Yeah, for this pull on a lot of the negotiation work that I did. So a lot of that, it wasn't just contract negotiation, it was actually relationship management and change management and influence without authority. I mean, it's all critical soft skills a lot of people don't like to talk about and are really hard, but that blow up businesses and organizations all the time. So there were a lot of things we used to talk about, and I really try to draw from in my current work as well, whether it's with entrepreneurs or within our firm. The true balance between advocacy and inquiry. We're in Western society trained to be advocating all the time. So we do this exercise where we had to pair up and somebody was supposed to sell something to the other person. And you realize that what they do in that 2-minute exercise was sell the entire time without asking about the actual interests or the concerns of the other person. So really I try to encourage all the time balancing that advocacy and inquiry. Really being authentic, and it sounds kind of cheesy, but you can't be sitting there listening to the person, just waiting to get your next point in. You've got to actually be genuinely trying to understand what their interests and what their concerns are. So listening for a particular thing that they're saying instead of just being poised to respond is really critically important, because in order to get to the win-win, in order to really come up with a creative solution, you've got to truly understand what are the obstacles, what's getting in the way of all the different stakeholders. And often we don't know what that is unless you actually ask, what are you concerned about? What would be wrong with this? What's the interest here? And sometimes, to your point, sometimes people do just actually want to be heard and acknowledged. And acknowledgement doesn't mean you agree, but acknowledging someone often gets whatever it is kind of out of the way, and then you can move forward with getting to the solution to the problem. And that's just a really subtle thing too that we used a lot. And I think 2 other points that I'd make is that I very carefully, and I've learned this the hard way, I choose my battles carefully, but I choose what to battle publicly and what to battle one-on-one. It's a really subtle thing, but it's really important, because sometimes things just shouldn't be aired publicly. It's just, no matter whether there's a solution there or not, if you're doing it publicly, that other person is not going to back down. So there's this, I lived in Japan for a few years, and there's this Japanese expression called nemawashi, which means around the roots. And in Japanese society really does that very well. A lot of it is prior to the official formal meeting, you go and talk to everyone and you gather the interests, you gather concerns, you gather the data, you make sure that everybody's aligned. And then in the actual meeting, in Japan it's very much often, rubber stamped and it goes through. But I try to do that, and this is not politicking, that's a very different thing, but making sure that you understand what is the data, what are all the different perspectives, what are the interest concerns, so that when you come to the discussion, you're much better armed with an ability to get to a creative solution. And then frankly, the final one is having someone who kind of is your mentor or your person who's going to kind of help you in the room. And that's a relationship that's built over time. That's something that's really important too, but you can only do that behind the scenes. You can't build that in a formal situation.
Great. Thank you, ladies. So we all know that our work is going to fill a large part of our lives. Yes. And I believe the only way to truly feel satisfied by your work is to love what you do. You know, as Guy said yesterday, my gosh, there was no doubt in my mind that he loves what he does. As entrepreneurs, as people that are either running your own company or running incredible business inside your company, Susan, have you really found that true love what I do phase? Are you still looking? And if you have you got there?
I think love what you do is temporary. Okay. I think it comes in and out. And so I have a rule. If you go 14 days without smiling or feeling excited about something, it's time to go. It's time to move on. You're done. I've never made it 14 days. It's really hard to be miserable for 14 days. But I've given it to a lot. And it's interesting because it reminds you, there's in the Jewish religion, there's a thing where you're supposed to be thankful as much as regret. So like, I am thankful that we all showed up today. I'm thankful that you guys are here. And if you start being thankful for everything, you start going, wow, there's a lot more thankfulness than, well, this didn't work out very well. And I think that rule about smiling is that it forces you to realize you probably are smiling a lot more than you realize. And I think when you're in high pressure jobs, that's it's an important thing to remind yourself, is that there is a lot of fun. I mean, I've been through 2 weeks of hell on a project right now, and it ended up okay. And now everybody's like, why aren't we more brave? Why don't we go for this more often? Why was that so hard? I want to kill them right now. But I realize it's like, you know, the stuff that is going to bring us a lot of joy and a lot of meaning and a lot of, oh my Lord, when we look back and talk about our careers and our lives, there's a lot of pain that gets us to there. So you've just got to do the math right. But I think I don't know about you guys, but everybody goes, oh my God, I'm happy every day, and I am finally in that, you know, up here. I've not met anybody yet. Is there somebody out here?
Come on up.
Yeah, but I mean, life's a roller coaster. I mean, everything's a roller coaster, and I've always said that if, you know, I don't know, but you know, at 3 we get off the little train that goes flat around here and pray that we get tall enough to go on the one that goes like this. And that's the world. I think when you've chosen these careers, you're signing up for the roller coaster, and I pay a lot to ride on roller coasters and scream, so you know, it's a good thing.
No, absolutely agree. And if you're enjoying what you do, even if it's temporary before the next project comes on, we always know that there's an end. There's an end to the chaos and the hell, or there's an end to the epiphany. So it's absolutely a balance.
There's one thing that I would share that kind of goes back to the last question and this question and the smile thing for 14. But I have a thing at Leo called lead or leave. And when you are getting ready, when you're frustrated and you want to leave an organization, ask yourself why you want to leave, and that might be the key to the thing you need to lead. Yes. It's fascinating. We have had more progress in our company when people come and say, I want to leave. And I say, why? And they go, because this and this and this and this and this. And I was like, so if you fixed all those, you'd stay? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, go fix them. And in 2 weeks, we changed something that they had worried about for 2 years. So think about when you're in that, I want to leave, think I want to lead. And I think that might be a really interesting way to push yourself up in the organization or push yourself forward in your company.
Gallup has a great survey around employee engagement and what causes people to feel engaged and what causes people to leave. And I'm happy to send a link to everybody if you're interested in it, but it aligns very well with what you're saying.
Yeah, and
why
you can
do it at
any level. It is not a seniority level concept.
Yeah, great. Katherine, what about for you?
I think about it a lot because it's busy. This is probably the craziest my life has ever been, again, with a 1 and a 4-year-old and then a really intense job, and it's amazing. I definitely try to be grateful, but it's just crazy, and I've just kind of embraced that it's going to be crazy. But I just try to prioritize, just ruthlessly prioritize, and I used to find it really, we talked about this a little bit, I used to find it really, really hard to say no, and now I have to. I have to say no for survival's sake. So setting priorities, saying no, and as cheesy as this sounds, being present. I'm trying to just be present. When I'm at work, I'm present at work, and when I'm at home with my family, I'm at home with my family, and I have a barrier between those two, and I find that actually solves a lot.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much better my life is because of that. It's pretty
Centered,
simple. But
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't check my email after 3,
Yeah.
and I don't check my email on weekends.
Oh, you're good.
Wow,
You gotta
touch
set the
me.
rules.
Note to self.
Because once my mind is embroiled in something that has snagged me on my iPhone, I'm not there anymore with them, with my kids. So it doesn't matter that I'm sitting with them at dinner. My mind is miles away trying to solve a problem for the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation in New York City.
Yes.
You know, and I'm really not there. So this art of attention, really the art of attention, of being there and not allowing the outside influences of the world, which I know is addressed earlier, is really the biggest secret to making it work. If you're in 2 different places and you're one body and one mind, you are in conflict constantly.
Yes. I have one of my favorite phrases is success without a plan is just an accident. I'm curious by the show of raise of hands, how many of you have what I would call a personal strategic plan? Not your corporate strategic plan, but what is your personal strategic plan? How many of you can raise your hands around that? I see a few hands in the audience. Kudos to you. As an entrepreneur, as an employee, as a CMO, as a mom, you have got to have a personal strategic plan. It guides you, it directs you, it keeps you focused and able to deal with all the hell balls that are thrown toward us. And I get plenty of them, believe me, either from my 12-year-old or from my clients or from my husband or from whomever. Page 18 of your books is all those little check marks and all those little great ideas that Kat has already introduced us to. If you do not have a personal strategic plan, I encourage everybody to open your book and write that down. It is the key to get you to where you want to be in your entrepreneurial career. Within your company or in starting your own business. Ladies, what other tips around your key success factors have made a difference in your lives? Amy?
That's broad.
It is broad. Intentionally.
Well, I've been less ambitious professionally in terms of scaling my business, I think, because of my personal commitments and what I know really makes me happy, which is having time with my family, being able to read books, pursuing, I have a lot of interest in alternative health and holistic kind of stuff, and really strategically making time for those things. I definitely could have grown SMARTY faster and built more of an empire by now if I had put my attention there. And having babies and having a meaningful relationship with my spouse and all of that has been really important to me. And that's not to say that you can't do the same thing at the same time, but something sort of falters, and as I saw those fault lines develop, I closed 2 markets in my company because it just wasn't worth it. The ROI was me really suffering as a founder and feeling like I wasn't leading those people, engaging those audiences in the way they deserved. So shut them down.
Wow. And I think that's one of the advantages of having a strategic plan, is it gives you permission what to say no to, as well as what to say yes to. if it aligns with your plan or it doesn't. So that gave you permission to make that decision.
This is a really silly example, and I'll make it quick, but one thing with little kids is you get invited to a lot of birthday parties, and as soon as they're in kindergarten, then the whole class invites everybody, and pretty soon, pretty much every weekend, there's the birthday party to go to. So this is, in my mind, I'm a business person, so I'm like, this is a 3-hour commitment. One of the parents kind of has to go unless it's a drop-off party, which is rare. So what happens for me is I think, okay, what's really important in my life? Well, we want really quality time with the kids over the weekend. I don't want them having like a sugar marathon at these things. So the truth is I'm going to start saying no to a bunch of birthday parties. I live in a village. It's 5,000 people. So I live outside of Boston now in the country. So everybody knows each other. So that's awkward. Saying no to people who kind of know you from school, classmates, etc. But it's the priority and it's the no I have to do because I've got these other things that matter more.
Great example. Great example. Thank you. Catherine, what about for you?
Yeah, I guess I've sort of lived my life and looked at my career from a very entrepreneurial perspective. I always tried to assess each year. So my husband had a 10-year plan to become an astronaut, and then he didn't become an astronaut. It just, for a number of reasons, didn't work out because it was a very rigid plan. But I have literally
Love
lived,
that goal.
It was awesome. It was awesome, but he's not an astronaut. So I lived my life every year sort of reassessing, is this meeting my interests? Is there something different that I could be doing? What do I want to learn next in terms of developing a skill set? And I was a cowgirl in a ranch in the Rocky Mountains one summer in undergrad. I ran a residential painting company. I worked at the Nagano Winter Olympics. I've done marketing. I've just done a lot of different things in my life because I was always trying to learn and to grow and to have fun while I was doing it. I think something that I feel that I learned along the way was to make sure that my identity wasn't too closely tied to anything I was doing, and not to say that I didn't work hard. I busted my butt at everything that I did. I worked very, very hard, and I met my commitments and everything, but my identity didn't get so tightly tied that I started to become myopic and miss opportunities. I stayed very nimble and recognized opportunities and made sure I prepared and then took advantage of them when they came my way. And I also tried too, just to, and not in an inauthentic way, but very authentically, just be different, be unique and be different at everything that I did, and then that, I think, in itself offers new opportunities. So that's just the way that I've sort of approached my life and career, and I think it has been fairly entrepreneurial.
Great. Aligns so well with what Scott said this morning. Be awesome at what you do. Give it your all. Susan, any kind of last ahas that you'd love to share with the crowd?
Well, I was thinking, I asked this question a couple of weeks ago, and I was trying to think on my best day, what are the behaviors that I lean into that I think make me successful? And I would say be courageous. Courage is exciting, it's scary, but be courageous. Be resilient. Careers are long. They're the up and downs. Be resilient. Be patient. Patience. My best ideas in this industry have taken at least three years to come to fruition, and many of them even longer, but they last a lot longer. They're more important to me, which is the last one, which is when you are courageous, resilient, and patient, you start to leave a legacy. And when you leave legacy, it makes it all worth it. So that's
great.
Those guide me.
Great, thank you. Inspiring success in leaders and teams. That is my mission. Okay? We all have to define what success is for us, regardless of your role. In time, if you have that definition, that success will either lead to, that desire, that drive will either lead to frustration or euphoria. But defining what success means to you in your position. My legacy is really a combination. It's not just who I am as a CEO of my business of 20 plus years. It's who I am as a wife. It's who I am as a mom. It's who I am to my friends, my colleagues, even strangers. What legacy are you going to leave behind in your role today or the role that you strive to be? And I started with a great quote. We went to kind of my mission, and then I had to share, I'm borrowing this, because I read this in a blog the other day, and I loved it. This individual's mission said, I want to infect 1 billion people with a possibility virus. I think that is exactly what this conference is doing. It's done for me. I hope it's doing for all of you. And I hope today we added a little bit more value so that you're feeling that possibility virus. You can feel it within yourselves. You can share it with your friends, your coworkers, your boss, and the world. Yes, I have high aspirations, but so thank you. Remember, you are all awesome. You all do have your voice at the table. Say it, speak it with strength, with confidence, and go get them. Thank you.
Thank you.